little bit of hope, even though she had no home, no family, and no friends. She trusted that one day her prayers would be answered. Despite her struggle, and never gave up. She believed that God had a plan for her, even though it seemed so far away. One blessed day, something unexpected happened, and was sitting in a corner of the street when a car stopped in front of her. A tall, handsome man stepped out. His name was Dickson, and he was a billionaire from the United States. He looked at Anne and saw something special in her, something no one else had noticed. Dickson walked up to Anne and asked her if she was okay. Anne, surprised by his kindness, didn't know how to respond. She was used to people ignoring her or treating her badly because of how she looked. But there was something different about Dickson. He spoke to her gently and asked if she would come with him, promising to help her. At first, Anne was scared. She didn't know if she could trust this stranger, but something inside her told her to take a leap of faith. After a few moments of hesitation, Anne agreed to go with Dickson. She followed him into his car, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. Dickson took Anne to a beautiful house, bigger than anything she had ever seen. He gave her new clothes, a warm bath, and delicious food. Anne looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe her eyes. She looked clean and beautiful again. Her heart was filled with gratitude, and she whispered a quiet thank you to God. Days passed, and Dickson treated Anne with kindness and respect. They talked about life, and Anne shared her story of hardship. Dickson listened with compassion. He admired Anne's strength and courage, even though life had been so cruel to her. Slowly, Anne began to trust him more, and their bond grew stronger. One evening, after a beautiful dinner, Dickson did something that took her by surprise. He got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. Anne's eyes filled with tears. She never imagined that someone as wealthy and kind as Dickson would want to spend the rest of his life with her. Anne said yes, and they were soon married in a beautiful ceremony. Dickson treated her like a queen, giving her the life she had always dreamed of. Not long after, they flew to the United States, where they would start their new life together. Anne couldn't believe how much her life had changed in such a short time. As if it was her reality now, and she was grateful every day. Anne poured her heart into raising her twins. They brought her so much joy. She named them David and Sarah. David was full of energy and curious about everything, while Sarah was calm and gentle. Every time she looked at her children, Anne knew she had found her true purpose. She had gone from having nothing to having a family she loved with all her heart. Though Anne was living a life of luxury, she never forgot where she came from. She would sit by the window sometimes, watching the rain fall, and remember the cold nights she spent on the streets. Those memories kept her humble. They reminded her to always help others, just like Dickson had helped her. Anne's experiences made her want to give back to the world. She told Dickson she wanted to start a charity to help homeless people, especially women like her. Dickson supported her idea, and together, they started a foundation to provide shelter, food, and education to those in need. It was Anne's way of showing gratitude for the second chance she had been given. As Anne settled into her new life, she began to understand that wealth didn't come without its challenges. People she hadn't heard from in years started calling, asking for favors and money. Some even tried to take advantage of her kindness. But Anne, with Dickson's guidance, learned how to protect herself while still helping others. One, her beauty, they only saw a poor, helpless woman. But deep inside, Anne had a good heart. She tried to take advantage of her kindness. But Anne, with Dickson's guidance, learned how to protect herself while still helping others. One, her beauty, no friends. She trusted they only saw a poor, helpless woman. But deep inside, Anne had a good heart. Gave up. She believed that God had a plan for her, even though it seemed so far away. One blessed day, she tried to take advantage of her kindness to rescue her from the life. But Anne, with Dickson, a car stopped in front of her. A tall, handsome man stepped out. His name was Dickson, and he was a billionaire from the United States. He looked at Anne and saw something special in her, something no one else had noticed. Up to Anne and asked her if she was okay. Anne, surprised by his kindness, didn't know how to respond. She was used to people ignoring her or treating her badly because of how she looked. But there was something different about Dickson. He spoke to her gently and asked if she would come with him, promising to help her. At first, Anne was scared. She didn't know if she could trust this stranger, but something inside her told her to take a leap of faith. After a few moments of hesitation, Anne agreed to go with Dickson. She followed him into his car, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. And to a beautiful house, bigger than anything she had ever seen. He gave her new clothes, a warm bath, and delicious food. Anne looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe her eyes. She looked clean and beautiful again. Her heart was filled with gratitude, and she whispered a quiet "thank you" to God. Days passed, and Dickson treated Anne with kindness and respect. They talked about life, and Anne shared her story of hardship. Dickson listened with compassion. He admired Anne's strength and courage, even though life had been so cruel to her. Slowly, Anne began to trust him more, and their bond grew stronger. One evening, after a beautiful dinner, Dickson did something that took Anne by surprise. He got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. Anne's eyes filled with tears. She never imagined that someone as wealthy and kind as Dickson would want to spend the rest of his life with her. Anne said yes, and they were soon married. Dickson treated her like a queen, giving her the life she had always dreamed of. Not long after, they flew to the United States, where they would start their new life together. Anne couldn't believe how much her life had changed in such a short time. As if their love story wasn't already perfect, Anne and Dickson were blessed with twins, a boy and a girl. Anne loved her children deeply, and she promised to raise them with the same faith and kindness that had carried her through her hardest days. In the peaceful moments after their marriage, Anne often reflected on her life. She was now living in a beautiful home in the US, surrounded by love and care. But deep down, she remembered the girl she used to be, the homeless girl who had wandered the streets, praying for a miracle where she came from. She would sit by the window sometimes, watching the rain fall, and remember the cold nights she spent on the streets. Those memories kept her humble. They reminded her to always help others, just like Dickson had helped her. Anne's experiences made her want to give back to the world. She told Dickson she wanted to start a charity to help homeless people, especially her. Dickson supported her idea, and together, they started a foundation to provide shelter, food, and education to those in need. It was Anne's way of showing gratitude for the second chance she had been given. As Anne settled into her new life, she began to understand that wealth didn't come without its challenges. They started calling, asking for favors and money. Some even tried to take advantage of her kindness. But Anne, with Dickson's guidance, learned how to protect herself while still helping others. One day, while working on her charity, Anne was shocked to see a familiar face. It was a woman from the streets who had once shared food with her when she was homeless. Her name was Grace, and she was still struggling. Anne couldn't believe her eyes. She immediately offered Grace a job at the foundation, and the two women shared tears, grateful for the chance to rebuild their lives. Anne's life was now filled with love, purpose, and hope. But she never stopped praying, thanking God for the journey that had led her here. Each day, she counted her blessings, knowing that she had been given a life far better than she had ever imagined. She promised herself that she would never take it for granted. Running a foundation and raising twins wasn't easy, but Anne was determined. With Dickson by her side, she found a balance between her family and her work. Together, they taught their children the importance of kindness and giving back to others, ensuring that they, too, would grow up with humble hearts. As David grew older, he became more curious about the world around him. One day, he asked his mother, "Mom, what was your life like before you met Dad?" Anne hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to hide the truth, but she wasn't sure how to explain it to her young son. Gently, she told him about her time on the streets and how God had brought Dickson into her life. David listened carefully, his eyes wide with wonder. "But you were homeless?" he asked, confused. Anne nodded, and she told him that no matter how hard life gets, it's important to stay hopeful and trust in God. Always be kind to others, she said, because you never know what they are going through. Sarah, on the other hand, was quiet but had a deep understanding of people's feelings. Asked how she could help others, and together, they would visit the foundation to meet the families they were helping. Sarah had her mother's kind heart, and I knew that one day, her daughter would grow up to do great things. With the success of their charity, Anne and Dickson were able to help hundreds of people. Families who had once been homeless now had homes. Children who had never been to school were now learning. Anne was proud of the difference they were making, but most of all, she was grateful that her story had led her to this moment. Like all mothers, Anne faced her own challenges raising her children. Sometimes, she felt overwhelmed. The twins had endless energy, and keeping up with them wasn't easy. But she loved them dearly, and with Dickson's support, they were raising them to be strong, compassionate individuals. Years passed, and Anne's family continued to grow. The twins were now teenagers, and Anne and Dickson were still deeply in love. They had built a life that was not just about wealth, but about love, faith, and giving back to those in need. As the twins entered their teenage years, they began to think about their futures. David wanted to become a doctor to help people, just like his mother had helped the homeless. Sarah, on the other hand, was passionate about art and dreamed of traveling the world to learn about different cultures. Anne and Dickson encouraged their dreams, always reminding them of the importance of kindness and humility. Anne made sure to support her children in every way she could. Whether it was helping David with his science projects or attending Sarah's art exhibitions, she was always there for them. She knew how important it was to have someone believe in you, especially after all she had gone. Life, however, wasn't without its challenges. One day, Dickson's business faced a major crisis. A deal that had been in the works for months suddenly fell through, and their financial stability was at risk. Anne, having been through hardship before, remained calm. She reminded Dickson that they had come from nothing and could face anything together. Anne and Dickson prayed together, asking God for strength to get through this difficult time. With hard work and determination, Dickson's company slowly recovered. And reminded them of the importance of faith during tough times. As David and Sarah finished high school, they prepared for college. Both had been accepted into prestigious universities. Anne felt a mixture of pride and sadness as she watched her children grow up. She was proud of the young adults they were becoming, but it was hard to let them go. She had been so deeply involved in their lives. Now, they were about to start a new chapter of their own. The day came when David and Sarah left for college. The house felt empty without their laughter and energy, but Anne knew this was just. She spent the day handing out food and supplies to those in need, sharing her story of hope with anyone who would listen. And realized how powerful her story was. As she spoke to the homeless women and men on the streets, they saw in her a beacon of hope. She had once been in their shoes, and now she was living a life of abundance. Her story became an inspiration, showing people that no matter how dark life gets, there is always a way out if you keep your faith. After returning from her trip, Anne was more determined than ever to expand her foundation. She wanted to help more people, not country but around the world. With Dickson's support, they began working on new projects, building homes for the homeless, creating job opportunities, and offering education for women and children in need. Anne's foundation soon attracted the attention of other charitable organizations who wanted to partner with her to make an even bigger impact. Anne was thrilled. She had started with a simple dream of helping a few people, but now, her work was reaching thousands. She knew this was her purpose, and it filled her heart with joy. One day, Anne received a surprise visit from her extended family. Relatives she hadn't seen in years came to see her, curious about the life she had built. Some of them had doubted her when she was homeless, but now they admired her for her success. Anne welcomed them with open arms, happy to reconnect with her past. Though it was a joyous reunion, Anne also took the opportunity to heal old wounds. She had felt abandoned by her family when she was homeless, but now she understood that together, they began to rebuild their relationships. Through it all, Anne's strength continued to. She was no longer just the homeless girl who had been rescued by a kind stranger. She was a powerful woman who had turned her life around and was now helping others do the same. She had grown into a leader, a mother, and an inspiration to all who knew her. After 4 years of college, David and full of new ideas and dreams. David had become a doctor, just as he had always wanted, and Sarah was a successful artist, traveling the world and sharing her work. And couldn't have been prouder of her children and the incredible people they had become. Children grown and her foundation thriving, and looked toward the future with hope and excitement. She and Dickson had created a beautiful life together, full of love, faith, and generosity. Their journey wasn't over, but I knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, just as they always had. As the foundation grew, and found herself taking on a new role, public speaker. Organizations around the world invited her to share her story. She was nervous at first, but with Dickson's encouragement, she stepped up to the challenge. And stood before crowds, speaking from her heart about her journey from homelessness to happiness. Her message was simple: never lose hope, no matter how bad things seem. And speeches began to have a profound effect. People from all walks of life were inspired by her story. Some were struggling with homelessness, others with personal hardships, but they all saw in an example of perseverance. And realized the power of her words and used them to uplift and encourage others, just as she had once prayed for strength during her darkest days. While Anne was thriving, her son David faced his own challenges. As a doctor, he often dealt with life and death situations, and sometimes it was overwhelming. One night, after a particularly difficult day at the hospital, David came home feeling defeated. And noticed his sadness and sat down with him. She reminded him that he, too, was making a difference, just like she had done through her foundation. And shared her own experiences of feeling overwhelmed by life's difficulties. She told David that every act of kindness, no matter how small, mattered. "You are saving lives," she said. "Even on the days when it feels losing, remember that you are making a difference." David listened, his mother's words giving him the strength to continue in his work. Meanwhile, Sarah was experiencing a breakthrough in her art career. Her works were being exhibited in galleries all over the world. But with success came new pressures. Critics analyzed her every move, and the demands of the art world began to weigh on her. One night, Sarah called her mother in tears, feeling like she wasn't good enough. And comforted Sarah, reminding her of the importance of staying true to herself. "Your art is a reflection of who you are," and said. "Don't let the opinions of others take away your joy. You have a gift, and the world." Sarah wiped away her tears, feeling reassured. She realized that her mother's wisdom had carried her through many challenges and would continue to guide her. To celebrate their many achievements and to reconnect as a family, Anne and Dickson planned a family vacation. They traveled to a beautiful island, far away from the stresses of daily life. David and Sarah, now adults with busy careers, appreciated the time to relax and be with their parents. The family sat around a bonfire on the memories of their time together stayed with them, reminding them of the importance of family. And continued her work with the foundation, while Dickson focused on growing his business even further. David and Sarah returned to their respective careers, feeling recharged and inspired. Though Anne had already done so much through her foundation, she wanted to decided to focus on helping young women, especially those who had faced hardships like she had. And believed that by empowering women, she could create lasting change in their lives and in their communities. And traveled to different cities, meeting young women who had faced abuse, homelessness, and poverty. She shared her story with them, offering not just financial help but emotional support as well. These women looked up aspect, from the daily operations to mentoring the women who stayed there. She felt a deep connection to them, knowing that she had once been in their shoes. As the years went by, Anne's foundation and shelter continued to grow. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a leader, a mentor, and a source of inspiration for women everywhere. Her legacy was not just in the work she had done, but in the lives she had touched and the hope she had given to so many. Anne's foundation didn't just stop at one shelter. It grew into a global movement, with shelters and support programs being opened in various countries. and began working with international organizations and governments to tackle homelessness and women's issues on a larger scale. Her mission became global, and her voice was heard far and wide. Anne's work earned her recognition and awards from around the world. She was invited to speak at international conferences viewed on television. Despite the fame, Anne remained humble, always reminding people that she was just an ordinary woman who had once been homeless. She believed that anyone could make a difference if they stayed true to their purpose. David, now a successful doctor, was offered a prestigious position at one of the world's top hospitals. It was a dream come true for him, but it also meant moving far from his family. He struggled with the decision, torn between his career ambitions and the close-knit bond he had with his parents and sister. David sat down with Anne to discuss his dilemma. Anne, as always, offered wisdom. "You've worked so hard for this opportunity," she said. "But remember, no matter where you go, your family will always be with you. We support you in whatever decision you make." With his mother's reassurance, David made the difficult decision to accept the job and move abroad. Meanwhile, Sarah had been working on a new art project, one that was deeply personal. She wanted to create a series of paintings inspired by her mother's journey from homelessness to success. Each piece would reflect a different stage of Anne's life, from the dark days on the streets to the bright future she now lived. When the series was completed, Sarah held the paintings captivated audiences, telling Anne's story in a way that words couldn't. Anne attended the opening night, moved to tears by the beauty and depth of her daughter's work. Tribute not only to her struggle but to the love and support of her family. One day, during a routine checkup, Anne received some troubling news about her health. She had been feeling tired lately, but had chalked it up to her busy schedule. Now, the doctors told her she needed to undergo further tests. Anne was scared, but she didn't want to worry her family. Eventually, Anne shared the news with Dickson and Sarah. They were all devastated, but Anne remained strong. "I faced so many challenges in my life," she said. "I will face this one, too." Her family rallied around her, offering their love and support as she underwent treatment. Anne's treatment was long and difficult. There were days when she felt like giving up, but she remembered the people who depended on her, the women she had helped, her family, and the countless others for inspiration. She pushed through, determined to survive, just as she had survived the streets. Throughout her treatment, Anne leaned on her faith more than ever before. She prayed every day, asking God for the strength to keep going. Her family prayed with her, and she received messages of support from all over the world. Anne had once prayed for a way out of homelessness, now she prayed for healing. After months of treatment, Anne's health began to improve. Touched by Anne's story. There were speeches, performances, and moments of reflection. Anne stood at the center, a living testament to the power of resilience and hope. At the celebration, Dickson had one more surprise for Anne. He unveiled a statue, a life-size sculpture of her standing tall, with one hand reaching out in a gesture of hope. "This is for you," Dickson said, "and for every person you've helped. It's a reminder that one person's kindness can change the world." Anne's influence continued to grow, and she became a global icon for hope and perseverance. People from all walks of life looked up to her, inspired by her story of survival and success. She was invited to meet world leaders, appear on television shows, and participate in global initiatives aimed at eradicating poverty and homelessness. Meanwhile, David started a family of his own. He married a fellow doctor, and they had a beautiful baby boy. Anne and Dickson were overjoyed to become grandparents, and they visited David and his family often. Holding her grandson for the first time, Anne felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. As David's life blossomed, Sarah had her own exciting news: she was engaged to be married. Her fiancé, Tond, was a fellow artist she had met during one of her exhibitions. He admired Sarah's passion and creativity, and they shared a deep connection through their love for art. When Sarah announced her engagement to the family, everyone was thrilled, especially Anne. Anne looked at Sarah and felt an overwhelming sense of joy. She remembered how far her daughter had come, not just in her career, but as a person. Sarah had inherited Anne's strength and resilience, and she was now building a life filled with love and creativity. And offered her full support in planning the wedding, determined to make it a date to remember. The weeks leading up to Sarah's wedding were busy but joyful. Anne and Sarah spent countless hours choosing flowers, decorations, and outfits. It was a bonding experience, one that reminded Anne of the importance of family. Despite all the success she had achieved, nothing mattered more to her than the love and support of her husband and children. On the day of the wedding, Sarah looked stunning in her white dress, a true reflection of her mother's beauty and grace. And couldn't hold back tears as she watched Sarah walk down the aisle. It was a day of celebration, not just for the couple, but for the entire family. Anne and Dickson danced together, reflecting on the incredible journey their lives had taken. After the wedding, Sarah and Tom started their life there, moving into a new home and continuing to pursue their artistic careers. Sarah's art continued to receive international acclaim, and she and Tom often collaborated on projects that brought attention to social issues, much like Anne's foundation did with homelessness. Anne loved spending time with her grandchildren, David's son and the twins, now growing up fast. They were the light of her life, and she often marveled at how fortunate she was to have a loving family. She made sure to pass down the lessons she had learned through her difficult journey, teachings, and faith. One day, Anne decided to take her family on a trip to her old village, Umeus. She wanted her children and grandchildren to see where she had come from and understand the roots of her resilience. When they arrived, they were welcomed with open arms by the villagers. It was a homecoming for Anne, a place where her story had begun. Anne gathered the children of the village and shared her story with them, from the days of hardship on the streets to finding love and building a new life. The children listened in awe, inspired by her words. Anne's story became a powerful reminder that no matter how hard life gets, there is always hope for a better future. While in Umeus, Anne was inspired to start a new project, a community center for women and children. The center would provide resources, education, and support for those in need, much like the work she had done in the city. With Dickson's financial backing and the help of the local community, the project quickly took off. The community center became a place of hope for the women of Umeus. Anne knew that this project was more than just a building, it was a legacy. She wanted to leave something behind that would continue to help others long after she was gone. Seeing the smiles on the faces of the women and children filled her with a sense of purpose. As Anne grew older, she often reflected on her life's journey. From being homeless and hopeless on the streets to becoming a global icon and philanthropist, her story was nothing short. She knew that everything she had been through had shaped her into the person she was today, and for that, she was grateful. Dickson surprised Anne with a special celebration for their 25th wedding anniversary. He organized a private gathering with close friends and family, honoring the love and partnership they had built over the years. Anne was touched by the gesture, and as they danced together, she realized that love had been the anchor that kept her strong through every challenge. David, now a successful doctor abroad, decided to return home to spend more time with his family. He had achieved great success, but he missed the close bond they all shared. His return was a joyous occasion, and the family was once again complete. Anne felt a deep sense of fulfillment seeing her children and grandchildren together. In a quiet moment, Anne sat with Dickson and shared how grateful she was for the life they had built together. "You found me when I was lost, and you believed in me," she said. "I wouldn't be where I am today without your love and support." Dickson smiled and took her hand. "You were always destined for greatness, and I just helped you see it." Anne's 60th birthday was approaching, and her family decided to throw her a grand celebration. It was more than just a birthday party, it was a celebration of her life, her achievements, and the impact she had made on the world. People from all walks of life came to honor Anne, and the event was filled with laughter, music, and memories. As Anne stood before the crowd at her birthday celebration, she realized how far she had come. She had once been a homeless woman with nothing but her faith, and now she was surrounded by love, success, and a family that meant everything to her. "I've lived a blessed life," she said, tears in her eyes. "And I owe it all to God and the people who believed in me." And began to think about the future of her foundation. She wanted to ensure that the work she had started would continue even after she was no longer able to lead it. She gathered her family and key members of her foundation to discuss the future. Together, they created a plan to ensure that her mission of helping the homeless and vulnerable would live on for generations, and decided to pass the leadership of her foundation to Sarah, who had always shared her passion for helping others. Sarah accepted the responsibility with honor, vowing to continue her mother's legacy, and knew that the foundation was in good hands, and she felt a sense of peace knowing that her life's work would carry on. With Sarah taking the reins of the foundation, Anne and Dickson began to enjoy a quieter life. They spent more time together, traveling to new places and revisiting special memories, and found joy in the simple things: morning walks, read by the fireplace, and spending time with her grandchildren. She felt content, knowing that her family was thriving and her work was in good hands. David, now married and a father of 2, was flourishing in his career as a doctor. He and his wife, Miriam, often visited Anne and Dickson, bringing their children along for family gatherings, and loved watching her grandchildren grow up, and she made sure to pass down stories and lessons from her own life. She wanted them to understand the importance of humility, perseverance, and kindness. Even in retirement, Anne's passion for helping others never faded. One day, she had an idea for a new initiative, a program to provide homeless individuals with the skills and resources to start their own businesses, and worked closely with Sarah to develop the program, combining her years of experience with Sarah's fresh ideas. The program became a huge success, empowering people to build better lives for themselves. As Anne watched Sarah run the foundation, she couldn't help feel an overwhelming sense of pride. Sarah had grown into a confident, compassionate leader, someone who could carry on the legacy of helping those in need, and knew that the foundation was in good hands, and she trusted Sarah to continue making a positive impact on the world. One day, while volunteering at a shelter, Anne encountered someone she never expected to see again, an old friend from her days on the streets. The woman, named Joy, had been homeless for years but had recently turned her life around through Anne's foundation. Joy's transformation was a powerful reminder of why Anne had dedicated her life to helping others. Anne and Joy spent hours catching up, reminiscing about the struggles they had both faced and overcome. Joy thanked Anne for giving her hope and a second chance at life. For Anne, it was a full-circle moment, a reminder of where she had come from and how far she had come. The encounter filled her with gratitude, and she realized that every life she had touched made a difference. As Anne began to face some health challenges. Nothing too serious at first, but enough to slow her down. Dickson, a devoted husband, was by her side through every doctor's appointment and treatment. Their love, which had started in such an unlikely way, had only grown stronger with time. Anne's family rallied around her during this difficult time, offering love and support. Sarah, David, and the grandchildren were frequent visitors, making sure Anne never felt alone. Despite her health issues, Anne remained positive, focusing on the joy of her family and the legacy she had built. She knew that no matter what happened, she had lived a fulfilling life. One evening, as Anne and Dickson sat together on the porch, they reflected on their incredible journey. "You've always been my miracle," Anne whispered to him. Dickson smiled, squeezing her hand. "And you've always been my greatest blessing," he replied. They both knew that their love had been the foundation of everything: their family, their success, and their happiness. Anne's health continued to decline, but she faced each day with grace and courage. Surrounded by her family, she knew that her life had been full of love, purpose, and meaning. In her final days, she reflected on her journey, from being homeless on the streets to becoming a global beacon of hope. Her story was one of resilience, faith, and the power of love. As Anne passed peacefully, her family vowed to continue her work, ensuring that her legacy of compassion and kindness would live on. Anne had transformed countless lives, including her own, and her story became a lasting reminder that no matter how dark life may seem, there is always hope for a brighter future. And so, Anne's name lived on, not just in the hearts of her family, but in the lives of all those she had touched. Her story was shared by many, inspiring generations to come, a tale of love, perseverance, and the unbreakable human spirit.
you.